Hey everybody. So a while back, I was requested to do a video of some kind, where I was talking, where I would to talk about a certain element of film that's really important to me. And when somebody were to if were to make a film, if they're planning on making a film, or we have future filmmakers or amateur filmmakers, what's the number one element of a film that absolutely needs to happen for every film that's ever made? Um, and I finally was able to come up with that element that I think is absolutely necessary for every film that ever gets made. And don't get me wrong. There's several things, because I'm one of those people too, where um, there's several things that has to go into a movie in order for it to work. We have to have good music and good acting, good cinematography, good directing, good lighting, good editing, good writing. All those things really combine into what eventually becomes a really good movie. But if I really were to nail it down to one thing, I think that's the most important. And for those who've watched my reviews for the longest time now, you will know that this is a very big and important thing to me. And just because when it comes to film, also, this is just, I think it's one of the more intriguing parts of making movies, simply because it's such a huge factor of what went into those great films. I think every film absolutely needs to have good writing in it. You cannot have a good film without good writing. I don't think it's possible. I think um, whether you like the film or not, or whether you look back at a film and look at the goods and bads behind it, more than likely there's something about the writing, whether it's the concept or the acting, or the interpretation of certain things. More than likely, something about the writing is what made that film successful. Or if it's a bad film, that's what made the film fail. Something went completely wrong during the writing, and that's how that film failed. Um, so for today's video, I'm going to talk about why it's so important to have good writing in the movie, while also talking about other those other big factors in making a film, but kind of how those can take a back seat in a way and still be successful. So not only that, but in today's video, I want to talk about 6 films that managed to get away with not having a certain aspect of a certain filmmaking element and is still able to be successful. So that's what this video is about today. It's not only about what good writing is in film. It's about those small but big things that go into a film in the filmmaking process. But you can kind of take a backseat on some of these when it came to these certain films, as far as being successful, and as far as that director taking that aspect out to kind of make a more unique film experience, so we can focus on those other elements that they decided to focus on. So to start the list off, films that manage to get away with no music at all, whether it's no musical score or just music they hear at an environment at a jukebox, or something environmental related, but it's really not, they didn't have to hire a musical score person, like they didn't have to hire Danny Elfman or Hans Zimmer in order to make the film work. 2 films that managed to get away with this were The Young Adult and The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock. The young adult, basically every time we heard music in the film, it was either the audio, a sound effect, something going on in the environment, or a good example too is it's a scene where Charlize Theron is back in her hometown and she's seeing this local band perform at a bar. They didn't need a musical score person to get that music in the film. Whoever was playing that band in the movie basically was providing the music themselves. So therefore, we really didn't need like someone like Danny Elfman to make that score play over that scene. It was all naturally from that environment during the scene. So Young Adult basically had no musical score, and I'm sure that was Jason Rittman's intention, simply because the film's kind of that about that woman kind of having a dull life, kind of going back to this boring old town that she hasn't been in years, because she's focusing on her writing career and things of that nature. So I can kind of see why Jason Rittman really didn't want a musical score in it, because he probably, kind of like with the next one I'm about to talk about, he probably really wanted to focus on things that were going on in the environment, and having any type of musical score at all may have ruined that feeling with the movie, kind of this natural returning to a town feeling that that movie had. And then in Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, Hitchcock actually did not want to have any music in the film at all. Because at that time, Psycho was pretty big by then, and North by Northwest and things of that nature. Films that had very good musical scores. For The Birds, he wanted it to be things you would hear in the environment, things that if birds were coming, how are we going to be able to hear those birds? So what he did is any sound that the birds, these trained birds actually make, that was basically the sound we'd be hearing throughout the movie. There'd be no musical score, um, it was basically just a musicless movie that allowed the environment and the audio and the sound effects to just kind of um, take the front center of that movie and just really make us feel like we're in that environment and we don't have to worry about a musical score in the background kind of getting us into the scene because that scene is already getting us into what's going on. So um, as far as good acting and good cinematography goes, a film that managed to get away with, I wouldn't say there's bad acting in this movie, and I wouldn't say there's bad cinematography in this movie. This film I'm about to talk about next was trying to make it feel like we were watching real life people handle this what could be a real life situation, since it is based off of some paranormal videotapes that have been found of people who actually have experienced ghosts in their homes. And the reason why I say this film basically had no form of cinematography is because we wanted to get the feeling that these were amateur, people who knew nothing about film or nothing about video. The only reason why we're watching what we're watching is because they wanted to document through a video camera of basically this girl had this ghost following her around, and the husband wanted to prove to everybody through this eventual videotape, which he unfortunately got killed for before allowing to do that. Um, that this ghost was following this girl around and that, he was trying to film it the best he can, trying to learn this video camera. There's even scenes where he's like, is this how you turn it off? Or is this how you work the light? Or, even he himself in the movie didn't know how to work this video camera. And I'm sure that was the director's intention to make us feel like we're watching this real life home video. And the film I'm talking about, you probably figured it out by now, is the original, not the sequels, because I know there's a lot of sequels. Some of them are very bad, but I'm talking about the original Paranormal Activity. That film was not really trying to have acting, and it wasn't really trying to have cinematography in it, because, like I said, I mean, they wanted to get the impression that this was real life people on camera, and they also wanted to get the impression that this guy who was filming all the scenes going on in this movie didn't know a lot about how to work a video camera. So in return, they didn't really need a cinematographer, and as a result, they were fine because basically all that first film was is getting us the impression that here's this videotape we found. It just so happens that this couple had a ghost in their home, and this is kind of the horrible thing that happened because they found out and they were trying to record this activity of this ghost going on in this home. And then another film that I want to talk about next, where it becomes to little or no direction, little or no, of the director actually doing something, is the film Knocked Up. And the reason why I bring Knocked Up into the video is because Judd Apatow, who directed the film, he wanted a lot of improv in the movie. He wanted these actors to really feel like they could just say whatever they wanted, really say what they felt this character would have said in real life if this person were to exist. And as a result, there's a lot of scenes in that movie that really weren't in the script, simply because, like I said, Judd Apatow really wanted us to get the impression that, Seth Rogen came up with that, or Katherine Heigl came up with that, or Jonah Hill came up with that. It was on the spot. It was funny. They were trying to go on these little rants that really felt personal to how that actor or actress interpreted that character. And as a result, we had a film that was more improvised than scripted, and as a result, we kind of had a unique movie because of that. So that's a good example of the director kind of taking a back seat where they still direct the movie, but they allow a lot of improv to happen simply because they really wanted to make it feel like that actor or that actress is saying that thing, and it's not something that came out of a script. When it comes to lighting in a film that had little or no lighting at all, simply because they wanted to make sure that we were really into this environment with this actor during the story because he's in a very tight environment with a very little light source, is the film Buried with Ryan Reynolds. Basically, any form of light source in that film was either from a candle, a match. I should say just a match because I don't think Ryan Reynolds had a candle with him in that movie. A match, or basically the light that came out of the cell phone back screen, the screen of that phone that had the light on it. That was basically his only light source, and that was really the only light source the movie used throughout the entire runtime. That's a perfect example, too, that you really don't need good lighting in the movie in order to make it work. Because in that film, they really want to get this feeling that he was claustrophobic in this coffin, and he had very little breathing room, very little space. He was freaking out by the fact that he was stuck in this small, tight coffin. And I'm sure the director of this film really wanted to get the impression that there was very little light source for him. That when that match ran out, or when that cell phone went out, he had no form of light available to him. When it comes to editing in a film, or little to no editing, I'm sure there was some editing involved since it is a big budget, or not really a big budget, just a film released through a Hollywood company. is the Blair Witch Project, and this is once again a film where it's supposed to be found footage. We're trying to get this feeling that these amateur filmmakers are trying to go in the forest and prove people wrong with, um, footage that they found and trying to say, this witch is just fake. It's all a myth. It's all just pretend, but it really wasn't. I mean, this witch really existed in this forest, and it killed him as a result. So. That's another example of a film that had very or little to no editing in it, simply because they really wanted to get the impression that we were watching this tape that was on this video camera we found in the forest somewhere. Be like, hey, what's on this videotape? I'm sure the director of the film really wanted us to get that impression with that movie. So, like I said, guys, all these films managed to get away with the things I just mentioned before talking about them, but I'm sure all these films involved here had some form of writing available to them. Though Knocked Up had, a lot of improv in it, a lot of it was written for the most part, and the concept of that movie had to be made before they could actually film the movie as well. So, writing is very essential to a movie, I think. And this video, I hope you leave the video really thinking to yourself how important writing is in a film, simply because, like I was showing here, there's other aspects of filmmaking that you can kind of get away with. But when it comes to writing, I think the film just kind of kerplops when it doesn't have a good script ready to go, or when the improv is bad, or things of that nature. So, hope you guys like the video, and I hope to see you here for the next video.